I didn't break his life. I just took off the brakes.
I was under a '98 Ford Ranger when my marriage ended, though I wouldn't know it for another 3 hours. The truck belonged to Mrs. Henderson from Maple Street, and it needed a new exhaust system. The work was simple, methodical, and honest. 3 things that apparently didn't describe my wife anymore. "Oliver, you down there?" Nikki's voice echoed through the shop bay. "Where else would I be?" I rolled out from under the truck, wiping grease off my hands with a shop rag that had seen better days. Nikki stood there with her arms crossed, wearing her usual uniform of coveralls and a skeptical expression. "Your wife just pulled up? Looks like she's got news." Nikki raised an eyebrow, the kind that makes women glow and men run for the hills. I stood up, my back cracking in 3 places. At 38, I was too old to be spending entire afternoons on a creeper board, but Knox Auto Body was my baby, and babies need constant attention. "She's not due back from that family vacation until tomorrow." "Well, she's early, and she brought company." Through the bay window, I could see Amy's silver Lexus, a car I'd never understand why she needed on a human resources manager's salary, parked next to my truck. She was standing beside it with her sister Steph and Steph's husband Greg. The 3 of them looked like they were posing for a magazine spread about people who'd never changed their own oil. "Great," I muttered. "The holy trinity of people I didn't want to see today." Nikki snorted. "You didn't want to see them any day. I'll finish up Mrs. Henderson's truck. You go deal with whatever fresh heck this is." I walked across the parking lot, still holding the greasy rag. Amy saw me coming, and her smile got wider, the kind of smile that made my stomach drop. I'd seen that smile before, usually right before she told me about some expensive purchase she'd made without consulting me. "Oliver! Honey!" She rushed forward and hugged me, which was unusual. Amy didn't do public displays of affection, especially not when I was covered in motor oil and sweat. "You're back early," I said, extracting myself from her embrace. "Everything okay?" "Everything's wonderful." She was practically vibrating with excitement. "We need to talk. Can we go inside?" Steph and Greg hung back by the car, both of them wearing matching expressions of smug satisfaction. Whatever was coming, they already knew about it. That made my stomach drop even further. "Sure, let's go to the office." My office was a converted storage room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a filing cabinet that hadn't been properly organized since 2015. Amy wrinkled her nose as she sat down. She always did, like the smell of honest work offended her somehow. "So," I said, settling into my chair, "what's this about?" Amy took a deep breath, clasped her hands together, and said, "I'm pregnant." For a moment, I just stared at her. We'd been married for 6 years, and for the last 3, she'd been adamant about not having kids. Too much responsibility, she'd said. Too expensive. Not the right time. I'd made my peace with it, though part of me had always hoped she'd change her mind. That's amazing, Amy." I felt a smile spreading across my face despite my confusion. "When did you find out? Why didn't you call me?" "Well, that's the thing." Her smile flickered. "It's not exactly... it is, but it's complicated." The smile fell off my face like a hubcap on a sharp turn. "Complicated how?" "You know how Steph and Greg have been trying to have a baby for years, and nothing's worked? All the fertility treatments, the specialists, everything?" "Yeah, I know, it's been rough on them." I had no idea where this was going, but I knew I wasn't going to like it. "Well, we found a solution. A family solution." Amy leaned forward, her eyes bright with that missionary zeal she got when she'd convinced herself that something terrible was actually wonderful. "I offered to be a surrogate for them. Isn't that amazing?" I blinked. "A surrogate? You're carrying their baby." "Exactly. Well, sort of. We decided to do it the natural way instead of through a clinic. Those procedures are so expensive, and the success rates aren't great, and..." "Wait." I held up my hand. "The natural way? You mean..." "I slept with Greg, just until I got pregnant. It only took 3 times, actually, which the doctor said was really lucky." "You slept with your sister's husband?" My voice sounded strange in my own ears, like I was listening to someone else talk. "You had love with Greg." "For Steph, for family." Amy's voice rose defensively. "This is a beautiful thing, Oliver. I'm giving my sister the gift of motherhood. How can you make it sound so dirty?" I stood up. My hands were shaking, so I shoved them in my pockets. "Get out." "What?" "Get out of my office. Get out of my shop." "You've got 15 minutes to get your stuff out of my house before I change the locks." "Oliver, you're being ridiculous." 15 minutes, Amy, starting now." I walked out of the office and straight to Nikki, who was torquing down the exhaust bolts on Mrs. Henderson's truck. She took one look at my face and set down her wrench. That bad? She cheated on me with her sister's husband and called it a family gift. Jesus Christ on a cracker. Nikki wiped her hands on her coveralls. You want me to go throw her out? No. I want you to make sure she actually leaves. I'm going home to pack up her stuff. You got it, boss. I drove home in a daze, my mind cycling through the conversation on repeat 3 times. She'd slept with Greg 3 times. Had they done it at our house? At Steph's place? At some hotel where they could pretend it was romantic instead of insane? Our house was a 2-story colonial that needed new siding and a roof repair I kept putting off. I bought it before we got married, back when I thought I'd fill it with kids and noise and life. Now it just felt empty. I was throwing Amy's clothes into garbage bags when I heard the front door slam open. Oliver! Greg's voice boomed up the stairs. We need to talk man to man. I walked to the top of the stairs. Greg stood in my entryway, red-faced and aggressive, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. He worked in pharmaceutical sales and never let anyone forget it. Get out of my house, Greg. Not until you apologize to Amy. She's outside crying because you're being a selfish prick about this. I'm being selfish. I walked down the stairs slowly, deliberately. You screwed my wife 3 times, got her pregnant, and I'm the selfish one. It wasn't like that. It was clinical, medical. We were helping Steph. Get out. Make me. Greg puffed out his chest. I'd never hit anyone in my life outside of a high school scuffle, but I'd spent 20 years working with my hands, lifting engines and transmissions and axles. Greg spent his days sitting in doctors' offices pushing pills. When I took a step toward him, he saw something in my face that made him stumble backward. You've got 10 seconds to get out of my house before I help you leave through a window, I said quietly. Your choice which window. Greg left. I finished packing Amy's stuff, piled it all in the driveway, and sent her a text. Your stuff's outside, don't come back. Then I went to the Rusty Anchor and ordered a whiskey. The Rusty Anchor was the kind of bar where everyone knew your name, your business, and your drink order. It had been a fixture on Main Street since before I was born, with scarred wooden booths, a jukebox that still played CDs, and a bartender named Lou who'd seen everything twice. Rough day? Lou asked, sliding my whiskey across the bar. You could say that. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Lou nodded and moved away. That was the thing about the Anchor. People respected your space until you were ready to fill it with words. I was halfway through my second drink when Detective Harlan slid onto the stool next to me. Harlan was semi-retired, pushing 60, with a face like worn leather and eyes that missed nothing. He spent most evenings at the Anchor nursing beers and telling stories about the old days. Heard you had some excitement today, he said. News travels fast. Small town. Your wife's sister's best friend works at the diner. She told the waitress, who told her boyfriend, who told me. Harlan signaled Lou for a beer. For what it's worth, the general consensus is that your wife's lost her mind. That's comforting. You know Greg's got a reputation, right? I looked at him. What kind of reputation? The kind where he hits on every woman under 40. His sales territory includes 3 counties, and he's been asked to leave at least 5 medical practices for inappropriate behavior with staff. Harlan took a sip of his beer. Your wife wasn't the first married woman he's messed around with. Just the first one stupid enough to call it a favor. The whiskey burned in my stomach. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have believed them? Guy like that, he's good at covering his tracks. And your wife. Harlan shrugged. No offense, but she's got that look. The one that says she's always hunting for something better. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Amy had always been ambitious, always looking at the next rung on the ladder. I just never thought I was something she'd climb over. So, what are you going to do? Harlan asked. I don't know yet. Well, when you figure it out, make sure it's legal. I like you, Oliver. Don't want to see you do something stupid. I finished my drink and ordered another. The bar was filling up with the after-work crowd, mechanics and teachers and shop owners, all of them winding down from honest days. I recognized most of the faces, had worked on most of their cars at one point or another. That's when Val walked in. Val was Amy's best friend, a woman who collected gossip like some people collected stamps. She worked as a receptionist at the dentist's office and knew everyone's business before they did. She spotted me at the bar and made a beeline, her eyes bright with predatory interest. Oliver, I heard about what happened. Are you okay? I'm fine, Val. Amy called me. She's devastated. She said you threw her out without even listening to her explanation. I listened. I just didn't like what I heard. Val slid onto the stool Harlan had vacated. You have to understand, she was doing this for family, for Steph. It's actually really beautiful when you think about it. Val, I turned to look at her directly. Did you know? Before today, did you know Amy was sleeping with Greg? Her face went red. Well, I mean, she mentioned they were exploring options. Did you know? Yes, she admitted. But Oliver, it's not like she was having an affair. It was just biological, mechanical, like going to the doctor. Except doctors don't usually undress and get that close with their patients. Val's mouth fell open. Lou, who'd been wiping down the bar nearby, made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. That's crude, Val said. That's accurate. I stood up and threw some bills on the bar. You want to know what's really crude, Val? The fact that my wife, your best friend, thought it was okay to screw her sister's husband and then expect me to just accept it. The fact that she didn't even ask me first. Didn't even have the basic respect to say, hey, Oliver, I'm thinking about letting another man get me pregnant. How do you feel about that? She knew you'd say no. Exactly. She knew I'd say no, so she just went ahead and did it anyway. That's not a marriage, Val. That's not even a partnership. That's just someone doing whatever the heck they want and expecting everyone else to clean up the mess. I was talking louder than I'd intended. The bar had gone quiet. Everyone listening to every word. Good. Let them hear it. Let them know what kind of person Amy really was. You're being cruel, Val said, tears forming in her eyes. Amy loves you. Amy loves Amy. That's it. That's the whole list. I grabbed my jacket. You want to help your friend? Tell her to stay away from me. Tell her to stay away from my house, my shop, and my life. And tell her that if Greg comes near me again, I'm going to rearrange his face. I walked out of the Rusty Anchor into the cool evening air. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of conversation as everyone started talking at once. By tomorrow morning, the whole town would know the full story. Amy's carefully constructed image of the perfect professional woman would be in pieces. Good. I drove around for a while, not ready to go home to an empty house. Eventually, I found myself parked across the street from Steph and Greg's place. A pristine suburban house with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. Amy's Lexus was in the driveway. My phone buzzed. Nikki, you alive? Me. Unfortunately. Nikki, where are you? Me. Being pathetic outside Steph's house. Nikki, on my way. Don't do anything stupid before I get there. She arrived 15 minutes later in her beat-up Toyota, parking behind me and climbing into my passenger seat. She handed me a gas station coffee without a word. Thanks. You planning to do something or just lurk like a creep? Haven't decided yet. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the house. Through the front window, I could see shadows moving around. A happy family meeting, probably, discussing how unreasonable I was being. You know what the worst part is? I said finally. I would have understood if she just wanted to leave me. If she'd said, Oliver, this isn't working. I want something different. I would have been hurt, but I would have understood. But this, sleeping with her sister's husband and calling it a gift, that's just crazy. It's not crazy, Nikki said. It's selfish. There's a difference. Crazy people don't know what they're doing is wrong. Amy knew. She just didn't care. So what do? You make her care. Nikki sipped her own coffee. You make all of them care. Not with violence or anything illegal, but there are other ways to make people regret their choices. Like what? Like letting everyone know exactly what happened. Like making sure Greg's reputation catches up with him. Like ensuring that Amy's professional life gets just as messy as her personal life. Nikki smiled grimly. You're a good guy, Oliver. Too good, probably. But even good guys are allowed to defend themselves. The front door of the house opened. Greg walked out, heading for his car, a restored 1967 Mustang that he loved more than anything except himself. He'd spent years working on that car, and he treated it like a child. That's a beautiful car, Nikki said thoughtfully. Yeah. Shame if something happened to it. I looked at her. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that cars are delicate machines. Lots of things can go wrong if someone doesn't maintain them properly. She grinned. And you're a mechanic. You know all the ways a car can mysteriously malfunction without anyone being able to prove sabotage. That's diabolical. That's revenge. Greg pulled out of the driveway, the Mustang's engine rumbling beautifully. I watched him go, an idea forming in my mind. You know what? I said. I think it's time Greg's luck started turning bad. The next morning, I woke up with a plan and a splitting headache. The plan was better than the headache, at least. Knox Auto Body opened at 8, but I was there at 6, making coffee and going through my mental inventory of every dirty trick I'd learned in 20 years of working on cars. The key to good revenge, I'd decided, was making sure nothing could be traced back to me. No evidence, no witnesses, no proof. Just a series of unfortunate coincidences. Nikki showed up at 7 with donuts and a mischievous expression. So, we doing this? We're doing something. I'm still working out the details. Well, work fast. Val's already been spreading the story around town, but she's spinning it to make Amy look like a martyr and you look like a jealous psycho. Of course she is. Also, Greg's been telling people that you threatened him. Says he's thinking about getting a restraining order. I laughed bitterly. A restraining order. The guy sleeps with my wife and wants to file a restraining order against me. Rich people logic. Nikki bit into a donut. So what's the plan? First, we need to document everything. Every interaction, every conversation, every threat they make. I want a paper trail showing exactly who the aggressors are. Smart. Second, we let the gossip do its work. Val might be spinning the story her way, but the truth is going to come out. People aren't stupid. They'll figure out who's really in the wrong here. And third, we make Greg's life a little more complicated. I pulled up a website on my phone. See this? It's the complaint form for the pharmaceutical company he works for. They take ethics violations very seriously, especially when it involves inappropriate relationships. Nikki's eyes widened. You're going to report him to his employer? I'm going to make sure his employer knows that one of their sales reps has a reputation for hitting on married women, including his own sister-in-law. All documented, all factual, all completely legal. I smiled. No lies, no exaggeration, just the truth, presented in the worst possible light. That's cold, boss. That's business. I spent the morning working on Mrs. Henderson's truck and drafting my complaint to Greg's employer. I kept it professional, factual, and devastating. I mentioned his reputation at various medical practices, his affair with his sister-in-law, and the concerns that his behavior might reflect poorly on the company's values. I hit send at noon. By 2 o'clock, my phone was ringing. Amy. What did you do? She screamed before I could even say hello. Good afternoon to you, too. Greg just got called into a meeting with his regional manager. They're investigating him for ethics violations. Did you report him? I provided factual information to his employer about behavior that might concern them. That's not reporting, that's being a responsible citizen. You're trying to ruin his life. I'm trying to make sure his actions have consequences. There's a difference. I kept my voice calm, which seemed to make her angrier. You and Greg made choices. Now you get to live with them. This is insane. You're acting like a child. Amy, you cheated on me with your sister's husband. You got pregnant with his baby, and you expected me to just accept it and move on. Now you're mad because I'm not playing along? I laughed. You don't get to call me the crazy one here. I want my stuff back. My clothes, my jewelry, everything. It's all in the driveway where I left it. If it's not there anymore, someone must have taken it. Not my problem. You're going to regret this, Oliver. I doubt it. I hung up. Nikki was watching me from across the shop, a huge grin on her face. You're getting scary good at this. I'm just getting started. That evening, I drove past Greg's house again. The Mustang was in the driveway, gleaming under the streetlights. It really was a beautiful car. A fastback with a 289 V8 engine, painted midnight blue with white racing stripes. Greg had won awards with that car at local shows. I parked down the street and waited until the house lights went off. Then I walked back, casual and unhurried, like I was just out for an evening stroll. I had a small toolkit in my jacket pocket. Nothing obvious, nothing suspicious. The Mustang's hood wasn't locked. They never were on these old cars. I popped it open and spent 5 minutes making some very subtle adjustments to the engine. Nothing dangerous, nothing that would cause an accident. Just small changes that would make the car run rough, stall frequently, and generally become unreliable. I removed one spark plug wire and loosened it just enough to cause misfires. I adjusted the carburetor mixture to run too rich. I loosened the battery terminal just a hair. Small things, easily fixable by a competent mechanic, but incredibly frustrating for the driver. When I was done, I closed the hood and walked away. No one saw me. No cameras caught me. Just another shadow on a quiet street. The next morning, Nikki came in laughing. Did you hear? Greg's Mustang broke down on his way to work. Had to get it towed to Henderson's shop across town. That's unfortunate. Henderson called me to ask if we could take a look at it since we're less backed up. I told him we were too busy. She grinned. But I did mention that Mustangs are temperamental cars, and sometimes they develop mysterious problems that are really hard to diagnose. You're evil. I learned from the best. My phone buzzed. Detective Harlan. Heard Greg's having car trouble. Also heard his company put him on administrative leave pending an investigation. Funny how bad luck comes in waves. Me. Karma's a real thing, I guess. Harlan. Karma drives a tow truck, apparently. Stay out of trouble, Oliver. I had no intention of staying out of trouble. I was just getting warmed up. That afternoon, I made another call, this one to Amy's employer. I didn't file a formal complaint. I just asked to speak to someone in HR about a personal matter involving one of their employees. When I got connected to Amy's supervisor, I was polite, concerned, and carefully vague. I'm calling because I'm worried about Amy Knox's judgment, I said. She's going through some personal issues that might affect her professional performance. I thought someone should know, just in case. What kind of personal issues? The supervisor asked. Well, she's pregnant with her sister's husband's baby. It was intentional. She says it's a surrogacy arrangement, but there's no legal documentation, no medical oversight, nothing. I'm concerned that someone who would make that kind of decision might not be exercising the best judgment at work either. There was a long pause. I see. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I'm not trying to cause problems. I just think someone should be aware of the situation. We appreciate your concern. I hung up, feeling only slightly guilty. Amy had made her choices. Now she got to explain them to her boss. The annual Millbrook Festival happened every September, a weekend-long celebration of small-town life with carnival rides, craft vendors, and a beer tent that did more business than all the bars combined. I hadn't planned on going. Crowds weren't really my thing. But Nikki convinced me it would be good to show my face. You can't hide forever, she said. And besides, everyone's talking about you. Might as well let them see you're not falling apart. I'm not falling apart. Then prove it. Come to the festival, eat some fried dough, pretend you're a normal human being for a few hours. So I went. The festival was packed, Main Street closed off and filled with booths selling everything from handmade jewelry to kettle corn. Kids ran around with balloons and cotton candy. The Ferris wheel turned slowly against the blue sky. It was aggressively cheerful, which made my mood feel even darker by contrast. I was standing in line for a burger when I saw them. Amy, Steph, and Greg walking through the crowd like they owned the place. Amy was wearing a sundress and sunglasses, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. Steph walked beside her, beaming. Greg trailed behind, looking uncomfortable in cargo shorts and a polo shirt. They hadn't seen me yet. I could have left, avoided the confrontation, but something stubborn made me stay in line. This was my town too. I wasn't going to hide. Amy spotted me when I was paying for my burger. I saw her freeze, say something to Steph, and then all three of them started walking toward me. Great. Oliver. Amy's voice was cold. I didn't expect to see you here. It's a public festival, Amy. I'm public. We need to talk. No, we really don't. Greg stepped forward, puffing out his chest in that way he had. Listen, man, this has gone on long enough. You need to accept reality and move on. Reality, is that what we're calling it? I took a bite of my burger, chewing slowly while they waited. Here's my reality, Greg. You're a sleazy pharmaceutical rep with a reputation for hitting on anything in a skirt. You slept with your sister-in-law, got her pregnant, and now you're shocked that someone's calling you out on it. It wasn't like that. It's exactly like that. The only difference is you convinced two women that it was somehow noble instead of just trashy. I looked at Steph. How does it feel, knowing your husband had to sleep with your sister to give you a baby? Does that feel like a gift to you? Steph's face went red. You don't understand. I understand that you're all crazy. I understand that you've convinced yourselves that this insane situation is somehow normal. And I understand that you're mad at me because I'm the only one willing to say it out loud. You reported Greg to his company? Amy's voice was rising, drawing attention from the crowd around us. He's on administrative leave. He might lose his job. Actions have consequences. Maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to play stud service for your sister. Greg's face went purple. You son of a... He swung at me. It was a clumsy, telegraphed punch, the kind thrown by someone who'd never been in a real fight. I stepped back and he missed, his momentum carrying him forward. He stumbled, caught himself, and came at me again. "Greg, stop!" Steph screamed. He didn't stop. He was beyond reason now. All his frustration and anger focused on me. We crashed through the crowd, people scattering and shouting. I wasn't trying to fight him. I was just trying to stay out of reach while he flailed around like an angry toddler. We ended up in the parking lot behind the festival, Greg chasing me between cars while a growing crowd followed to watch. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. "You ruined everything!" Greg shouted, breathing hard. "We had it all figured out. We were going to be a family." "You were going to be a mess," I shot back. "Did you really think this through? What were you going to tell the kid when they got older? Hey, your mom is also your aunt, and your dad is also your uncle, and your parents are actually siblings? That's not a family tree. That's a family wreath." Greg charged again. This time I didn't move fast enough, and we both went down between a pickup truck and a minivan. He got in one good punch that split my lip before I managed to shove him off and scramble away. "That's enough!" Detective Harlan's voice cut through the chaos. He pushed through the crowd, his hand on his belt where his off-duty tools sat. "Both of you, knock it off!" Greg and I stood there, breathing hard, glaring at each other. My lip was split and red. Greg's shirt was torn. We both looked ridiculous. "Oliver, you okay?" Harlan asked. "I'm fine. He attacked me." "That's not true." Amy pushed forward. "Oliver provoked him." "I watched the whole thing," Harlan said calmly. Greg threw the first punch. Multiple witnesses. "Now, we can do this two ways. Everyone can walk away and cool off, or I can make some calls and we can sort this out at the station. Your choice." "I want to press charges," Greg said. "He's been harassing us." "Harassing you?" I laughed, tasting metal on my tongue. "I've been avoiding you. You're the ones who came up to me at the festival." "You reported me to my company." "I provided factual information about your behavior. That's not harassment. That's consequences." Harlan held up his hands. "Everyone shut up. Greg, Amy, Steph, you three go that way. Oliver, you come with me, now." We separated. Harlan walked me to his car and pulled out a first aid kit, handing me some gauze for my lip. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said quietly. "I'm defending myself. You're poking a hornet's nest. I get it. They deserve it. But you need to be smarter about this. Greg's looking for an excuse to make you the bad guy. Don't give him one. So what am I supposed to do? Just let them win? No. But you need to think 3 steps ahead. Every move you make, ask yourself, how will this look if it ends up in court? Because that's where this is heading." I nodded, pressing the gauze to my lip. He was right. I needed to be smarter. "For what it's worth," Harlan said, "the whole town's on your side. People are starting to ask questions about Greg and Amy. The story Val was spreading isn't holding up under scrutiny. Good. But that also means they're getting desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. Watch your back." I drove home feeling bruised, but oddly satisfied. Greg had thrown the first punch in front of dozens of witnesses. Whatever happened next, I had that in my favor. My phone buzzed. It was a video from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it and started laughing. Someone had filmed the entire confrontation at the festival, including Greg's wild swings and my dodging. The video ended with Greg on the ground, his shirt torn, screaming about how I'd ruined everything. The caption read, "Local pharmaceutical rep loses his mind at Millbrook Festival." It had already been shared 200 times. Greg's video went viral, at least by small-town standards. By Monday morning, it had been shared across 3 counties, accumulating thousands of views and hundreds of comments. Most of them weren't sympathetic to Greg. "Dude needs anger management classes. This is the guy who sells blood pressure medication? Ironic. I heard he was sleeping with his wife's sister. No wonder he's losing it." The comments section had become a gossip mill, with people sharing stories about Greg's behavior, Amy's attitude, and the whole sordid situation. Val tried to do damage control, posting long defenses about how the situation was being misunderstood, but that just made people dig deeper. Someone found Amy's LinkedIn profile and noticed she'd listed family planning consultant as a volunteer position. The comments on that were brutal. My phone rang Tuesday morning. It was a lawyer named Patricia Chen, no relation to anyone I knew, just a coincidence of names, who specialized in family law. "Mr. Knox? My name is Patricia Chen. I represent Stephanie Morrison. She'd like to speak with you." "Steph? Why?" "She's filing for divorce from Greg. She'd like to discuss the situation with you, as you're a witness to much of what's happened. Would you be willing to meet?" I was so surprised I almost dropped the phone. "Steph's divorcing Greg?" "Yes. Apparently, the festival incident was the final straw. She's realized that the surrogacy arrangement was a mistake, and she wants to end her marriage before the baby is born. What about Amy? That's part of what she wants to discuss with you. Can you meet us at my office this afternoon? I met them at 3 o'clock. Patricia's office was in a converted Victorian house on Elm Street, all dark wood and leather furniture. Steph was already there, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Her perfect makeup was gone, replaced by red eyes and blotchy skin. Oliver, she stood when I came in. Thank you for coming. I'm not sure why I'm here. Because I owe you an apology. She sat back down, twisting a tissue in her hands. And because I need your help. Patricia gestured for me to sit. Stephanie has some things she wants to tell you about the surrogacy arrangement. Things that might help you in your divorce proceedings. I'm listening. Steph took a shaky breath. The surrogacy wasn't my idea. It was Amy's. I stared at her. What? Amy suggested it. About 6 months ago. She said she'd been reading about surrogacy, and she thought it would be a beautiful way to help us have a baby. I was hesitant at first, but she was so enthusiastic, so convincing. She said it would bring our families closer together. And Greg? Greg was against it initially. He said it was too weird, too complicated. But Amy kept pushing. She'd come over when I wasn't home and talk to him. She'd send him articles about surrogacy, success stories, all of that. She wore him down. I felt something cold settling in my stomach. Are you saying Amy seduced Greg? I'm saying Amy wanted this more than anyone, and I was too desperate for a baby to question why. Steph's voice broke. I thought she was being generous. I thought she was helping us. But after the festival, after seeing how she acted, how she defended Greg instead of considering your feelings, I started to wonder if this was ever really about me at all. Patricia leaned forward. Stephanie found some text messages between Amy and Greg. Messages that suggest their relationship went beyond the surrogacy arrangement. She handed me a folder. Inside were printed screenshots of text conversations between Amy and Greg, dating back 8 months. They started innocent enough, discussions about fertility and timing, but they got progressively more intimate, flirtatious, suggestive. We should do this more often, one message from Amy read. It feels right. Greg's response? What about Oliver? Amy. What about him? This is bigger than him. This is about family. There were dozens more. Plans to meet when I was at work. Discussions about how to keep me from finding out. Jokes about my obliviousness. She was having an affair, I said quietly. The surrogacy was just an excuse. I think so, Steph said. And I think Greg went along with it because he's weak and Amy's persuasive. But that doesn't excuse what he did. What they both did. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because, she hesitated, because I want to help you. You were right at the festival. This whole situation is insane. I let my desperation for a baby blind me to how wrong this was. And now there's a child coming into the world who's going to grow up in the middle of this mess. Patricia spoke up. Stephanie is filing for divorce and requesting full custody of the child once it's born. She's also willing to testify in your divorce proceedings about Amy's behavior and the true nature of the surrogacy arrangement. What about the baby? I asked. I'm going to raise it, Steph said firmly. Alone, if I have to. Amy gave up her rights when she signed the surrogacy agreement. We did have that much documentation, at least. She's the biological mother, but legally I'm the parent, and I'm not going to let her use this child as a pawn. I looked at the folder in my hands, at the evidence of Amy's betrayal spelled out in black and white. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Mostly, I just felt tired. What do you need from me? Testify at my divorce hearing, Steph said. Tell the judge what you saw, what Amy told you. Help me make sure Greg doesn't get custody or visitation rights. He's the biological father. He's also unstable, unemployed, and facing ethics violations at his former company. I have a better case if I have witnesses to his behavior. She looked at me with desperate eyes. Please, Oliver, I know I don't deserve your help, but that baby doesn't deserve to grow up with Greg as a father. I thought about it. Greg raising a kid, teaching them his values, his approach to life. It was a horrifying thought. Okay, I said, I'll testify. Steph started crying. Thank you so much. Patricia walked me out after we'd discussed the details. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, Mr. Knox, you're handling this remarkably well. Most people in your situation would have done something much more destructive by now. The day's not over yet. She smiled slightly. Just keep doing what you're doing. Document everything, stay calm, and let them destroy themselves. They're doing a pretty good job of it so far. I drove back to the shop, my mind spinning. Amy had orchestrated the whole thing. She'd seduced Greg, convinced Steph it was a generous gift, and manipulated everyone into going along with her plan. And for what? A baby? An affair? Some twisted sense of control? Nikki took one look at my face when I walked in. What happened? I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression getting darker with each detail. That manipulative witch, she said finally. She played everyone. Yeah. So what are you going to do? I'm going to help Steph get custody. I'm going to divorce Amy, and I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person she is. How? I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots Patricia had sent me. By telling the truth. All of it. No more hints, no more implications, just the facts laid out where everyone can see them. That's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. I'm just making sure everyone knows who made it that way. I spent that evening creating a document. It wasn't angry or emotional, just a clear, factual timeline of everything that had happened, supported by screenshots, witness statements, and documented evidence. I included Amy's text messages with Greg, the dates of their encounters, her manipulation of Steph, and Greg's history of inappropriate behavior. Then I sent it to Val, not to post publicly. That would be too obvious, too vindictive. But Val was the town's information hub. If I gave her the truth, she'd spread it faster than any social media post ever could. And she'd do it in a way that seemed like gossip, like she'd discovered it herself, which made it even more believable. The text I sent with the document was simple. Thought you should know the whole story before you keep defending Amy. These are facts, not feelings. She called me 20 minutes later. Oliver, where did you get this? Does it matter? Is it true? Silence. Then, some of it I knew, but the text messages, I didn't know about those. Amy used you, Val. She used all of us. She wanted an affair with Greg, and she found a way to make it seem noble and selfless. And you helped her sell that story. I didn't know. Now you do. What you do with that information is up to you. I hung up. By the next morning, the story had spread. I could track its progress through the phone calls and texts I received. First from people asking if it was true, then from people expressing sympathy, then from people who were angry on my behalf. The tide had turned completely. Amy went from being seen as a generous sister to being recognized as a manipulative cheater. Greg went from being a grateful brother-in-law to being exposed as a weak, unethical predator. And Steph went from being the perfect older sister to being a sympathetic victim of her own desperation. Amy tried to do damage control. She posted a long statement on social media about how she'd been trying to help her sister and how the situation had been misunderstood. But the screenshots of her text messages with Greg were already circulating. Her words rang hollow against the evidence. Greg tried to threaten legal action against someone, anyone. But his lawyer apparently told him he didn't have a case. You can't sue people for telling the truth. On Thursday, I got a call from Amy's former employer. She'd been let go. The official reason was restructuring, but everyone knew the real reason. Her judgment had been called into question, and HR departments don't like uncertainty. Greg's pharmaceutical company made their decision official too, terminated for ethics violations. His career in medical sales was over. Friday afternoon, I was working on a brake job when a familiar silver Lexus pulled into the parking lot. Amy got out, and for the first time since this whole mess started, she looked defeated. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked like she'd been crying. Oliver, her voice was small. Can we talk? I set down my wrench and wiped my hands. What do you want, Amy? I want to explain. I want you to understand. Understand what? That you manipulated everyone around you to have an affair with your sister's husband? That you lied to me, to Steph, to everyone? I understand perfectly. It wasn't like that. It started as a real surrogacy plan, but then Greg and we connected. We had chemistry. And I thought maybe this was the universe telling me something. The universe, I laughed bitterly. The universe didn't tell you to cheat on your husband, Amy. That was all you... I made mistakes. I know that. But we could start over. We could move somewhere new. Leave all this behind. Are you insane? I stared at her. You cheated on me, got pregnant with another man's baby, destroyed your sister's marriage, and ruined 2 careers. And you think we can just start over? I love you, Oliver. No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone. You love having someone to fall back on when your plans blow up. But you don't love me. If you did, none of this would have happened. Tears were running down her face now. Please, I have nothing. No job, no friends, no family. Steph won't talk to me. Greg won't talk to me. I'm pregnant and alone and I don't know what to do. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, the part that had loved her, that had imagined a future together. But that part was buried under too much betrayal. You made your choices, Amy. Now you get to live with them, just like the rest of us. You're cruel. I'm honest. There's a difference. I turned back to the brake job. Goodbye, Amy. She stood there for a long moment crying. Then she got in her car and drove away. I watched her go, feeling nothing but relief. That evening, the Rusty Anchor threw an impromptu celebration. I hadn't asked for it, but apparently the whole town had decided I deserved a win. Lou poured free drinks, people bought me dinner, and Detective Harlan gave a toast about standing up for yourself. To Oliver Knox, he said, raising his beer, the man who proved that nice guys don't always finish last. Sometimes they finish first and the jerks finish covered in karma. Everyone cheered. I felt embarrassed and grateful and exhausted all at once. Nikki appeared at my elbow. You did good, boss. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. She clinked her beer against mine. So, what's next? Next, I finalize my divorce, testify at Steph's hearing, and try to get back to normal. Normal's overrated, but I'll take it. The celebration was still going when Greg's Mustang pulled up outside the shop. I saw it through the window. Greg behind the wheel, his face twisted with rage. He got out and started walking toward the Anchor with determined steps. Here we go, Harlan muttered. Everyone stay calm. Greg burst through the door. Oliver, get out here. The bar went silent. I stood up slowly, keeping my hands visible. What do you want, Greg? I want you to admit what you did. You destroyed my life. You turned everyone against me. I told the truth, that's all. You're a liar, a manipulator. Greg. Steph's voice cut through his rant. She'd been sitting in the corner with Patricia, and now she stood up. Stop. Just stop. Steph? What are you doing here? Making sure you don't do something stupid. She walked toward him. It's over, Greg. The marriage, the job, all of it. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. This is his fault, Greg pointed at me. He reported me to my company. He spread lies about us. He told the truth, Steph said firmly, and you know it. You slept with my sister. You had an affair and called it surrogacy. You destroyed our marriage and your career all by yourself. Oliver just made sure everyone knew about it. Greg's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought he might cry. Instead, he turned and ran out of the bar. We heard his Mustang's engine roar to life, heard the squeal of tires as he peeled out of the parking lot. Then we heard the crash. Everyone rushed outside. Greg had made it about 50 yards before his car. The one I'd sabotaged weeks ago, the one that had been running rough ever since, had stalled out. He'd been going too fast, panicked, and rear-ended a parked delivery truck. The Mustang's front end was crumpled. Steam rose from the broken radiator. Greg sat in the driver's seat, his head on the steering wheel, his shoulders shaking. Someone call an ambulance, Harlan said, already moving toward the car. And the police? Greg wasn't seriously hurt, just bruised and shaken. But the car was totaled, his pride and joy destroyed. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. As the ambulance took him away and the police took statements, I stood with Nikki and watched the wrecker hook up the Mustang. You sabotaged that car weeks ago, she said quietly. You think that caused the crash? The car stalled because of what I did. But Greg was driving recklessly because of what he did. Who's really responsible? That's some philosophical bull right there. That's the truth. I watched the wrecker pull away, taking the Mustang with it. He made his choices. I just made sure they cost him something. The next week moved quickly. Amy moved out of state back to her parents' house in Ohio. Greg moved into a cheap apartment on the edge of town, unemployed and disgraced. Steph filed her divorce papers and prepared for the baby's arrival. And I went back to work. Knox Auto Body was busier than ever. Apparently being the guy who stood up to cheaters and manipulators was good for business. People wanted to support me, wanted to show they were on my side. Mrs. Henderson brought me a casserole. The guys from the hardware store sent over a gift basket. Even Val, chastened by her role in spreading Amy's lies, stopped by to apologize. I should have questioned her story, she said. I should have seen through it. We all should have. But we wanted to believe the best of people. That's not a bad thing, Val. Still, I'm sorry. Apology accepted. 6 months later, I stood in a courthouse as a witness at Steph's divorce hearing. I told the judge everything: the affair, the manipulation, Greg's instability. Patricia presented the text messages, the timeline, the evidence of Greg's unethical behavior. The judge granted Steph full custody. Greg was allowed supervised visitation twice a month, but that was it. The baby, a girl Steph named Claire, would grow up knowing her father only as a cautionary tale. After the hearing, Steph found me in the hallway. Thank you, she said, for everything. I know I don't deserve your help after what I put you through. You were a victim too, I said. Amy manipulated all of us. The difference is you recognized it and got out. Still, thank you, she paused. Claire's going to grow up hearing about what happened. I'm going to make sure she knows you were one of the good guys in this story. Just tell her the truth. That's all any of us can do. I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. My phone buzzed. Nikki, asking if I wanted to grab lunch. I texted back yes and headed to my truck. Life wasn't perfect. I was divorced. My trust in people was damaged, and I'd spent 6 months being the center of small-town drama. But I'd survived. More than that, I'd won. Amy and Greg had tried to use me, manipulate me, and make me accept their twisted version of reality. Instead, I'd exposed them, ruined them, and walked away clean. Sometimes the good guys do win. Sometimes telling the truth is enough. And sometimes revenge doesn't have to be violent or illegal. It just has to be inevitable. I climbed into my truck and drove back to Knox Auto Body, ready to rebuild my life one honest day at a time. 6 months after that, I was closing up the shop when a car I didn't recognize pulled into the lot. A woman got out, tall, dark-haired, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. She looked around the shop with an appraising eye. Oliver Knox? That's me. What can I do for you? My name's Rachel. I just moved to town and my car's making a weird noise. Someone at the diner said you were the best mechanic around and also the most honest guy in Millbrook. She smiled. Apparently, you've got quite a reputation. I tried to do good work. I heard you do more than that. I heard you're the guy who took down his cheating wife and her lover without throwing a single punch. I laughed. The story gets more dramatic every time someone tells it. So what's the truth? The truth is I just refused to accept their version of reality. Everything else followed from that. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. I like that. Refusing to accept someone else's reality. That takes guts. Or stubbornness. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. She laughed. Well, stubborn or brave, I'm glad you're the one working on my car. When can you take a look at it? Bring it by tomorrow morning. I'll see what I can do. She drove away, and I finished locking up the shop. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Somewhere across town, Amy was probably settling into her new life, trying to rebuild from the ashes of her own choices. Greg was probably sitting in his apartment, bitter and alone, blaming everyone but himself for his fall. And I was here, in my shop, in my town, surrounded by people who knew the truth and respected me for telling it. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a good life, an honest life. And in the end, that was enough.